Welcome to episode 235 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. Just your host, Harper Cody, with you for this one. Abrams and Melbourne unable to join us for this pod, but that's okay. We'll roll along here. And we've got a very special guest joining us. In front of you on the screen here, it is Alex Adams. He covers the Ottawa Senators for Sportsnet.ca as a writer, and he is also the host of the Behind the Play podcast. Alex, how are you, sir? Thanks for hopping on with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Harper. Things are great. It's been a lot of fun being around the team in Ottawa with just all the enthusiasm of the Sens finally being good for once. It's been a long time, and it's just fun to be around a team that's winning and people care, and it's much better than the opposite. So no complaints here for on my end.
Awesome. Yeah, and before we get into the team and the all the vibes around the Sens right now, just want to go into your background a little bit and how you got into this role with Sportsnet as a writer covering the Senators, how you kind of got into this role, and what's the experience been like so far?
My journalism path is very unordinary. Um, my dad was a prof at Carleton for a long time. He worked for CBC, Globe and Mail. He was I call him a real journalist. Not that I'm not, but doing much more like politics and not about the penalty kill formations. It's kind of a different type of journalism. But yeah, basically the pandemic happened, and I love listening to podcasts. Hockey ones, Zach Lowe of ESPN, or formerly of ESPN. So I just was like a podcast geek in terms of sports type stuff. And a buddy of mine were like, you know what, we have all this time on our hands. Why don't we start a podcast? So I started a podcast. A couple. I had another one that was called Passion Project. That was basically me interviewing, Harper, why do you love hockey? Why do you love broadcasting? Like, just friends, family, people in my kind of circle. And then I was very lucky. My dad, weirdly enough, used to work at CBC in the 80s, and the two sports people there were Chris Cuthbert and Gord Miller. So, and then let's just say Gord Miller had beef with Barstool, and my dad connected with him on Twitter.
Yeah,
And long story short, we eventually, because of some squash beef, I guess, not between my dad and Gord Miller, but between Gord Miller and Barstool, we connected. And my dad invited me along to have a drink with him. We connected, and I said, "Hey, I have this podcast. Can you come on?" He said, "Yeah, of course." So he came on. I thought this was like the coolest moment of my life. Gord Miller is such a great guy. Like, I love Gord.
yeah,
And basically got him on, and then it kind of got the things rolling. I think you've had Ian Mendez on the
that's
show,
right. Yeah,
or I'm not. But so then that summer, Ian Mendez came on. Long story short, kind of got the ball rolling. I started emailing a bunch of people. I got David Amber, Ron McLean, uh, people in the Ottawa area. Like, there's countless names. I just went
Kyle
on this
Bukauskas and
podcast.
so
As
on.
Bukowski,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it was great.
that's awesome.
And so, and then I kind of got the itch, and I took myself. There was a FIFA World Cup basketball, international basketball. Canada was playing in the World Cup, and they were going to Jakarta. And I had a friend who was like, "You should go as media. It's really easy to get credentials." And I had some money saved up, and like, this would be an awesome opportunity. So,
Yeah.
um, I spent more money on airfare than anything else, but got myself to Indonesia and just had a ball. Like, I was interviewing Shea, Dylan Brooks, RJ Barrett, just in a foreign country. It was just awesome. And I came back, had the itch, and I reached out to the Hockey News, and didn't have anyone accredited, covering the Sens on the ground. So Steve Warren, a great guy, thought I had at least enough to get credentials, and I got myself a foot in the door, and then basically this Sportsnet opportunity came about this year, and thankfully they decided to go with me, and I could go on and on, but that's kind of a long story short.
Yeah, and I know that Wayne Scanlon has been a big resource for you, and he was in this role prior to you becoming the next writer for Sportsnet.ca for the Sens. Is that correct?
Yeah, no. So Wayne basically, he's the I think he was the best writer covering the team for, his whole career. But he decided to quasi-retire. He still writes for us, and he will during the playoffs and everything. But
Cool.
he just didn't want to do the day-to-day, and he kind of thought maybe someone young who isn't scarred by the industry and everything should do it. I'm just kidding. Wayne's an awesome guy. So anyway, so yeah, so I,
Cool.
I quasi took over him, but I see him at the rink all the time.
Nice.
He's following the rink story in terms of LeBron Flats and everything. So he's still in it, but just not the day-to-day minutia of covering a hockey.
Yeah. I did, I have a little bit of writing experience myself. I did some writing for the Hockey Writers for a little while, just covering the Buffalo Sabres, and really enjoyed it. Like, it was just a cool title to kind of have, and write, opinion pieces and things of that nature. But writing's a grind, man. And I'm sure you can attest to that. So how do you kind of get through that grind day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what we have at Sportsnet, if you look at our writers across, at least in the hockey world, Luke Fox, Ian McIntyre, Mark Spector, Eric Engels, like, we do have a bit of a freedom and a little bit of, it's not just CP. No offense to Canadian press, but it's not just down the middle. We can be funny, we can be
Yep.
kind of bring our own voice more into the writing, and I think that's what makes it really enjoyable. I've made jokes about the LRT, and just stuff like that where I couldn't be putting that in if I was writing for Canadian Press or somewhere else. So you
Hmm.
can kind of have your own voice, and it is a grind. For example, like last night, I write the day after a story. So game ends, I'm writing and getting notes, and I'll write during the game, but
Yep.
game ends, I'll wait for the post game kind of scrum to happen. It was on the road, it was in Toronto, so I don't travel. I get quotes. I write till 12 in the morning. I wake up. I go back over it, make sure everything's good. And earlier in the day, I had an idea about a story where in my head I'm like, I swear this, like whenever the Sens have been scoring a lot of goals and been effective in winning, it's been when Kachuk, Stützle, and Drew have been been on the same line, have been aligned. And so I tracked back and was looking through like different places, and I realized basically the Sens went on a 5-game winning streak, the line was split up, or there was an injury. Then they started they were on a 5-game losing streak. Then they'd go on a winning streak when the trio was together and
Right.
their analytics and they were scoring and all that. But I have to manually bring it all together, right?
Yep.
So, and then make it a story, like not just say, hey, cool, like make it flow, make people be engaged into it.
Yep.
So it's a lot of work, but I think the fun of it is when you're almost on call and you're like, okay, I need to figure what's the story? What's the storyline? And the game's over, or they're late in the third period and they're losing or whatever. And then you're like, oh, like you're thinking in your head, you have like almost brain cramps, and then it comes to you, and then you figure it out, and then it comes out. And I find those are the stories that are the best. The ones that are pre-written or you have like a narrative in your mind, sometimes they're good. I'm not trying to say it's good to prepare,
Yeah.
but typically the ones I found, at least in my career, and I'm not as esteemed as many writers in the industry, but are when it's like not spur of the moment, but you almost see it coming throughout a game, right? And I feel those are the most interesting stories, and uh, in like sports, and don't write about just the game. It's like what would Harper learn? Like come to, like read a story of mine. It's like I'm not going to tell you that Dylan Cousins has a point in every game as a Senator. I might throw it in, but that's not the point. It's like, so has the PK been struggling of late? Well, has Suits been struggling and why? Right. So it's like I'm trying to teach you something or give you something that you didn't know
Right.
um, about the game that you might think, oh, this is interesting. Like why the Stützle Kachuk Giroux line's been really effective and why it's translating to winning, right? Like it's not just about the one game. So
Yep.
that's kind of the needle, because if I had that great Stützle story and they don't set up Jake Sanderson for a goal, then I'm like, well, shit. like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
kind of be on the ball and you have to figure it out. And it helps when they win. It's much easier to write when they win because it's kind of positive and you can,
Yep.
there's, whoever's scoring or playing well, it's kind of easy to detect and make a storyline. When they lose, I find it's much harder because unless it's obvious, and sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So, but I love it. No complaints. But that's kind of maybe a bit of the behind the scenes in terms of my.
Yeah, no, love it. I can certainly relate to that myself. When we connected over the holidays there, I think I mentioned that got a little bit of writing experience covering the Belleville Senators as well when they first came to, to the American Hockey League and back to the city of Belleville and that sort of thing. So that was really cool. I was at Loyalist College at the time taking radio broadcasting, so like it connected really well. And I get it, man. Like I would take a cab to the rink and then I'd be up there in the media section. You're doing your notes and everything. You go down below after you do an interview with one of the players and the coaches. Then it's a cab back to the dorm after, and I'm up till, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning writing a story. And I like what you said there that, it's more than just writing about game recaps because when I reached out to the hockey writers, it was like, okay, these are great, but we want to see more than just game recaps. So I think that was a really important thing that you mentioned there. And yeah, sounds like it's been a blast so far, and can't imagine that it would be anything but. So that's great stuff there. And before getting into the Senators specifically and on this role that they've been on here, you know that I'm a guy who wants to get into the industry as well. There are a lot of guys out there who want to. Um, I know that probably the first thing you'll say is like, well, I don't think I'm one to, give advice or that sort of thing. But what advice would you give to guys like me out there who are looking to break in like you were?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I should say is I'm very lucky. I know I'm not just saying it, just a lot of things went, you know,
Yep.
in terms of meeting the right people at the right time. And I'm not saying I didn't work hard for it because like talk about the cab ride. Like, I feel like I've done that a bunch of my life where like relentlessly trying to track down people's emails or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm trying to say like it's all luck, but um, you have to get lucky. I think the first thing I would say is like, to be honest, there's not a lot of jobs and there's not going to be, it's not growing really. So my perspective when I started podcasting, when I started writing, when I started doing it, was like, I love this. And I was in a position that I could do it as a side gig, like in terms of, even though I wasn't making money, like just, I would find people just for my podcast. I wasn't making any money, right? So don't expect to get paid, but do it because you love it. So like, and make yourself distinct. Like, what are you doing differently, right? So I'm not saying my podcast is not the best podcast of all time or anything like that. But what I tried to do that was different was like, I'm gonna have Harper or Kyle Bukowskis, or I'm gonna have journalists explain their careers, kind of like what you're doing with me, asking me
Yeah.
like the tricks of the trade. How do you write? How do you make a good podcast? And I'll ask them about the Sens or whatever, but I'll do all of that, right? And that I didn't see anyone else doing that. So I was like, you know what, I'll do that. And it was a great way for me to network in hindsight. I didn't really think about it at the time, but it worked out.
Yeah.
Um, I would say so. Like, if you want to get into it, start a blog, start a podcast, and try to make it different, right? And I think you know, I think it's not always bad if you're not a fan, but you get excited like a fan. I think that's something like I love being around the NHL. Like, who wouldn't? And why would I be like, oh, I need to be not excited to be at a Sens practice? Like, who effing cares, right? So, um, like, be
Exactly.
yourself, and for whatever you like. If you love analytics, if you love storytelling, if you love podcasting, if you like analysis, whatever, right? But be different. Don't expect anything. Be kind to people too. Like, if you have someone on a podcast, like, be respectful. Don't expect them to give you your time. Always be very, but for the most part, journalists get the grind, but just be nice. Like, don't expect, because if people think, it's very transactional, I think people will kind of lose respect for you. So I know I kind of went in a bit of a tailspin, but that's maybe a little bit of what I would maybe offer, and just network, meet people. Don't just ask for jobs or anything like that. Just try to pick people's brain, get to know them, reach out, but just try to be as good as you can at what you do.
BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it more convenient to get you started. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Your next chapter starts today. Get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp online therapy at betterhelp.com/boysinthebooth in paid partnership with BetterHelp.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sportsbooks to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there's never been a better time to get signed up, and we're here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping right away with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through the link in the description down below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use the link and support the boys. So one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. This podcast is also sponsored by the absolute best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. If the tickets are green, for example, you better act quick and secure those things because that's a good deal. But if the tickets are red, maybe wait a bit before pulling the trigger and monitor the price in the app. SeatGeek just makes it way too easy. Anyway, here's the best part though. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Yeah, Alex, I think a lot of great stuff in there, and that's a big thing for me, being kind, treating people the right way. I think when you do that, things are going to go well for you. So that's great stuff in there. Great to get your perspective on that for sure. All right, let's focus on the hockey team. The Ottawa Senators, they've won 6 in a row, comfortably in that number one wildcard spot right now with 77 points. This is a team that has not made the postseason since 2017. The vibes are high in Ottawa right now. Just what are you seeing being there and covering the team?
Yeah, the vibes are definitely really high in Ottawa right now. It's been 7 long seasons and 8 years since the team made the playoffs. And I think what's been great is I think how the fans have responded. Like the last couple home games, they played Detroit, and it was just raucous with Allmark playing spectacularly. On the weekend, Brady Tkachuk obviously had the overtime winner, and people might have seen that post-game interview, but that building was really loud. And I think the fans are starting to kind of jump on the bandwagon. and the players are noticing it. Like if you talk to them, they're like, "This is wild." I think Drake Batherson was like, "It's crazy that there's so many people out on a Monday night against Detroit, right?" And that the building was rocking. So I think the players are noticing, and it's nice that the team's finally on a roll. And I think right now, some people on Twitter might disagree with me, but this team's closer to jumping into a divisional spot than they are to being caught by a team in the wild card position. So I think
That's
right
right.
now, if they keep staying hot, I don't think they're going to be 7-0-1 for forever in the next 8 games. I mean, you never know, but I doubt that's going to happen again. But if they can continue to play really good hockey, which they've been doing, they've been really good defensively. Obviously, Almar's played well, and they're starting to score a little bit and create more chances, especially with Dylan Cousins coming into the fold. I think they're in a really good position to make the playoffs. Money Puck, The Athletic, wherever you look, it's around 90-95% chances that they make the playoffs. I think that's probably right. You never know, but I'd be surprised if they don't punch their spot to the playoffs. But it's typically, as you know, Harper, like it's kind of where like how you're playing going into the playoffs means almost as much as where you finish in the standings.
Yep.
So I think this team's playing really well at the perfect time, and they're going to be a really hard out if they make the playoffs, which seems quite likely.
Yeah, well said. It is great to see the fan base in the nation's capital really getting behind this team again and getting excited because it's been quite a while since we've seen that with the Ottawa Senators for sure. You mentioned one player in particular there, and that's Dylan Cousins. What a start for him into his tenure with the Ottawa Senators since being acquired in that trade with Buffalo at the deadline. Josh Norris and Jacob Bernard-Docker going the other way. Dennis Gilbert coming with Cousins along with a second round pick to the Ottawa Senators. Cousins just it appears to a lot of people on the outside, and I'm sure you'll agree, Alex, that he just looks like he has the weight of the world off his shoulders. It looks like he has a new lease on life, and he's got 4 points through his first 5 games as a member of the Ottawa Senators. What has impressed you the most about Dylan Cousins in an Ottawa Senators uniform here, 5 games in?
I think it's really his, obviously, I think the first game he played for Ottawa, he had 9 hits, which was a career high. Um, and I think he's brought that to the game. But I think the thing that sticks out to me the most is just his ability to make plays and to hold on to the puck, get zone entries. I think that's the biggest difference between him and Josh Norris is Norris was never a playmaker. He was more of a finisher. And this team had guys that could finish, like a Kachuk, Stützle, Batherson to some degree, but they needed guys that would drive play. And that's really what Ottawa needed. I think Cousins has really done that. Obviously, he's a big body. He can skate pretty well for his size. Really good at just holding on to pucks, making quick plays. On the power play, he's been good. He's a pretty good penalty killer as well. So I think overall, he's just been a really good fit for Ottawa. And, no slight to Josh Norris. I don't think he's a bad hockey player by no means. Obviously, he's already injured in Buffalo, which sucks, and that was, I think, a major part of the trade. But I think, a lot of times in hockey, it's not just about talent, it's about fit. And I think the Senators have a much better player for the players. They acquired a player that fits the mold of what they needed much better than, his predecessor in Josh Norris. So I think it really worked out for the Sens, and he's been thriving so far in Ottawa.
Yeah, and just going back a little bit to the offseason and some of the roster decisions that Steve Stais made to this team. One of the big things that he talked about, Alex, was the need for more pros on this roster. And you look up and down the lineup, you have Nick Jensen, Lena Solmark now, David Perron, Michael Amadio, guys who have experience. They know what it's like to win, and just those solid veteran guys that you need on a young team like the Ottawa Senators trying to build themselves back up. Anyone in that group that has really impressed you the most? Like I know Elliot Friedman often mentions Perron And, when he is healthy and going, especially in the playoffs, I mean, he was so good for that St. Louis Blues Stanley Cup team in 2019. It's great to see him back healthy and in the mix. I think Michael Amadio is probably playing some of his best hockey of his career right now in his second stint with the Senators. Anyone in particular that jumps out to you at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, I think give Steve Staios a lot of credit. Last year the team was really young. I remember talking to Jacob Chikrin, and he said, outside of Claude Giroux, we're a pretty young group. And he got guys that had won cups in terms of Amadio and Perron and Allmark. Didn't, of course, win a cup, but he has a Vesey trophy. He's 30. He's been in the league for a long time. Nick Cousins has won a cup. Jensen's been in a ton of playoffs, series. I think for me, the one that, I mean, honestly, all of them have played really well, but I think the one that strikes to me has been like the acquisition of Nick Jensen. I think just having a steady guy for Thomas Chabot was so needed. And Jacob Chikrin on paper, he's a much more talented player than Nick Jensen will ever be. But he's a right shot. He's really smart. He's really good. He's a good skater. And him and Chabot have just really worked well, where a lot of times Chabot can get up in the zone, create plays, and Nick Jensen can be that safety net. And I think that really solidified Ottawa to having really two really good defensive pairs. I was actually doing some research, and they've slid a little bit the last 2-3 months, but Jensen's been hurt and he's been out for a while. So I want to give that a little bit of like a tidbit there for that.
Yeah.
But overall, I think just the rise of Chabot as one of the, like, if you look at like WAR or any of these kind of advanced stats, he's like one of the top 10, 15 players in the league in terms of, his analytics. So in terms of Thomas Chabot. So I think really bringing that into the fold has been such a major change for this team. And on the surface, I was like, Nick Jensen, like, I don't watch a lot of Capitals games, but he's been the perfect fit. But I think Amadio has been awesome. I talked to Ridley Gregg today, and just how well that line with Pinto and him, they're just all puck hounds, really good defensively. None are really elite skaters, but when you just have like guys that know how to play, are really smart, and are really tenacious on the forecheck and have a bit of an offensive upside. So, and David Perron's, he's had, shout out to him, dealing with the family stuff with his daughter, and then he got hurt after coming back.
Yeah.
And he's talked about how he really never got settled until recently. And now I think he has, I want to say 6 or 7 points in the last 8 games after really only having 1 goal in the first like 20 or so. So he's really getting hot with Perron and Cousins. So I think the team's really filling itself out. And I think just bringing in those veterans, I think you finally really notice with this team, where I think in the past couple of years, they didn't have veterans that were not only good enough to play at the level of being a top 9 player or a top 4 defenseman. They just didn't have those guys that were still good and veterans that knew how to win. And I think Steve Staios deserves a lot of credit for kind of molding this roster the way he has so far.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that for sure. Want to ask you about the captain as well, Brady Tkachuk. There was that great post game interview with Claire Hanna of TSN after that overtime victory over the Detroit Red Wings. Just kind of feeding off the crowd and the energy and I mean, how excited are you to watch this guy in the playoffs potentially here? I mean, it's looking like that's what we're going to see here. How excited are you for that?
Yeah, I mean, I just looked to the 4 nations and how well Kachuk played in that tournament with the best players in the world, with everything on the line, and he did not just look not out of place. He looked like he thrived. And I think that's what we're going to see from Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs. And, credit to him, he's always, despite maybe some media from other places in the United States, he's never wavered in terms of being committed to the team. He signed a long-term contract when this team was not a destination or even a place most people wanted to commit to. So I think he's going to be he's a good play. He's a really awesome hockey player. He's so big, strong, great hands, good shot, great around the boards, winning puck battles. Obviously, he's not the most fleet of foot, but I think in a playoff series, like when the game slows down, when there's less space, I think he's going to thrive. Like playoff hockey is built for Brady. Brady Tkachuk is built for playoff hockey, and playoff hockey might have been made for Brady Tkachuk. So I think overall he's going to do excellent. It'll be interesting if he played against his brother, which is probably the likeliest scenario at this point. But either way, I think we're going to see the best of Brady Tkachuk in April and maybe May. It's nice to see that he's going to likely finally get a taste of playoff hockey, and I'm not too worried about how he'll handle the pressure.
Absolutely. And one more guy I want to ask you about here before we wrap up. You know, Jake Sanderson had a real tough start to the season. You know, a young defenseman, but man, oh man, as the season has gone on here, he has just continued to take one step after another in terms of becoming an elite defenseman that Ottawa, you know, envisioned him being when they picked him so high in the draft back in 2020, I believe. So, what have you seen from Jake Sanderson in terms of those next steps that he needed to take to become an elite NHL defenseman?
You know, I always thought that his upside was going to be determined by his offensive game and how good that is going to be. Because he has the skating ability, he has the size, he has the smarts to be one of the top tier defensive defensemen. But I think what was going to kind of separate himself from the rest was going to be his offensive game. And I think since January 22nd, 25th, depending on the date, he's second in points from a defenseman outside of just below Cale Makar. And it's interesting. Like, I wrote about this last week, and I've talked to Jake a couple times this year. And before Four Nations, at the beginning of the season, when Artem Zub was hurt, he was struggling, and he said, I don't feel like I'm good enough to make Team USA. And he was really hard on himself, and he really wanted to play for that American team. And then Artem Zub comes back. You can start slowly see his game coming back. That partnership has been amazing ever since they've been united the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And then his offensive game started slowly coming around, which was a point of emphasis. And he told me that he started working with a skills coach called Jonathan Sigalet. I think he played a little bit in the league midway through the season in November, because he just felt like, I need to improve. And he said he told me he was had fallen out of love with the game, and he kind of rediscovered it working with the skills coach. So he's found it. Obviously, that goal against the Leafs was kind of, you could see him jumping into play, using that shot, and obviously scored in the Four Nations final. But I think overall he's just become way more poised with the puck. He's shooting more, which has been a point of emphasis. He hasn't always been that really aggressive player on the offensive side of the game. And I think, he's only 22. I think sky's the limit for him. I don't want to, get ahead of ourselves too much, maybe like people in Montreal with Lane Hudson, but I do think that he can be a top 5 defenseman in the league, because defensively he is rarely do you see him make any mistakes. He's so fast that he can intercept any rush opportunities and get back on defense and quash teams' counterattack. So he's shooting the puck more, creating plays. I think kind of what exemplified that, which I don't think he would have made, a play that he wouldn't have made maybe in the past, was against Detroit. It's 1-1. The Sens are getting hemmed in the whole game. They get a power play late, and the puck comes to him for Brady Tkachuk. He's in the slot, and I think the old Sanderson would just rifle it as hard as he could and just hope it hit the net. And Dylan Cousins is off to the side, and he just takes a half second, makes the right read. Dylan Cousins has a wide open net and scores the game winner. And I think those are the kinds of plays that I just don't think Sanderson was making earlier this season and earlier in his career. So if he's close to a 50, 60 point guy, which he's going to likely get 50 points. He's like a 60, 70 point guy for the rest of his prime, I guess. I think he's going to be on Norris ballots, and I think the Senators are just going to keep going up and up and up. And I think the trajectory of him, Brady, and Stützle, it's the core that you want moving forward. And I think this team, I feel like this is the precipice. They're going to make the playoffs. They're almost assuredly not going to win the Stanley Cup, but I think this is the start of something in Ottawa, and it's exciting times.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. Alex, this has been great, man. Great to get you on and get your perspective on not only, personal career stuff and but also on the Ottawa Senators, one of the hottest teams in the NHL right now. It is great to see this team playing meaningful games down the stretch again, and by all accounts, a team that's going to make the playoffs for the first time since 2017. So again, Alex Adams, you can follow him online on sportsnet.ca. He's on X as well, and his podcast called Behind the Play. Alex, thanks so much for your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me on.